छुपाने से धागे रसन रसन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। देखा है बाबा मैंने जो मंजर बताऊं क्या। नेज़ों पे था रखा हुआ सर हर शहीद का। घोड़ों के दौड़ने से था टुकड़े बदन बदन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। कासिम की लाश लाए थे दामन में शायदी। सहरे से भी नियाज थी नौशाह की जबी। एक शब भी रह न पाई न जिस की दुल्हन दुल्हन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। बरची कले जाए अली अकबर में जब लगी। बाबा को दी सदा कभी आवाज मुझको दी। कहता था सीना था मैं के माँ चुबन चुबन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। गाजी के बाद गोया क़यामत गुजर गई। प्यासों की आस टूट के बन में बिखर गई। एक शोर अल अतश का बपा ता दहन दहन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन। और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत।
मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद।
एक बार नारे सलवात।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद।
सलामी जिसने दारे बाग़ पंजतान देखा उसी ने रोज़े रिज़वान का चमा देखा। सलाम मीरन में जो बंदड़े ने पैरहान देखा। खबा की तह में लपेटा हुआ खबा की तह में लपेटा हुआ दे कहाँ तूने बसारत किधर गई है इमाम, मिली ना लाश पिसर की तमाम रंदे खां, जवान बेटे की मैयत न तुमने पहचानी, ये किसका नज़े पसर ये किसका नज़े पसर है, ये किसका देखा सलामी जिसने आज इमाम रज़ा शहीद हुए, शहे हर दो सरा शहीद हुए, शह के रंजो बला शहीद हुए, खा के जहर दगा शहीद हुए, खा के जहर दगा शहीद हुए, शाह के सब गुलाम रोते हैं, हमसे रुखसत इमाम होते, हमसे रुखसत इमाम होते हैं, खै के रुखसत हुए इमाम रज़ा, था मदीने में तहलका बरपा, कोई खदमों से लिपट जाता था, और लबों पे किसी के थी ये सदा, ऐ शहे औसिया खुदा हाफिज, ऐ इमाम रज़ा खुदा हाफिज, ऐ इमाम रज़ा खुदा हाफिज, तय मंजिल को करके फिर एक बार आए दरबार में शहे अबरार, उठा ताज़ीन से शाह को वो मक्कार, पास अपने बिठा लिया ज़िन्हार, पास अपने बिठा लिया ज़िन्हार, तब कहा शाह से ये वो मगरूर, आप इस वक्त खाइए अंगूर, आप इस वक्त खाइए अंगूर, जब्र से सिलाई की वावैला, खा के अंगूर को उठे मौला, पूछा मामू ने चले किस जा, कहा हजरत ने तू जहाँ भेज, कहा हजरत ने जू कहाँ भेजा, कहा के ये शाखासो आम चले, सर पे डाले अबा इमाम, सर पे डाले अबा इमाम चले, घर में आकर तड़प रहे थे इमाम, जहर ने कर चुका था अपना काम, खै जो आई लिया जिगर को थाम, थाना एक लज़ा आपको थाना एक लज़ा आपको यास थी बेकसी थी गुर्बत थी, मेरे मौला पे क्या मुसीबत, मेरे मौला पे क्या मुसीबत, मुस्तरिब थे बहुत शाह ज़ीजान, गश जो तारी हुआ इमाम पा हिचकी जो आई मौत की नागाह फिर कहा ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह फिर कहा ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह तन से रूह रज़ा इधर निकली खब्र से फातिमा उधर निकली खब्र से फातिमा उधर निकली
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला
और मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for joining us as we commemorate these majalis tonight, specifically for the Shahadat of Imam Raza or Muhammad wa ali Muhammad Salawat. Umma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the remaining nights up until Arba'in, inshallah. We are sincerely grateful to have Dr. Mehdi Hazari here and accepting our invitation to recite majalis. We pray for him and his family. Please recite aloud salawat. Sheikh Hazari will be addressing majlis starting tonight and continuing through Tuesday night. The topic of the lectures will be surrounding, is Islam outdated or do we need to catch up to God's religion? The lecture series will start every night, inshallah, at 7:30 p.m. with Namaz-e-Jamaat and majlis starting at 8 p.m. inshallah. Over the next couple of nights, there are quite a few programs coming up until Arba'in and on Arba'in. So just a few notes before I invite Molana up. Tonight, inshallah, the commemoration of Shahadat of Imam Raza. There will be tabut in the Urdu hall where Urdu majlis is being recited, and the tabut will remain so that people who are outside can do ziyarat, come inside and do ziyarat. Tomorrow, before majlis at 5 p.m., Sheikh Hazari will be leading a special program on combating peer pressure and substance abuse. This program is sponsored by the IEC Youth Group, and I understand that there will be new IEC shirts being sold as well. Inshallah, on Sunday, there will be Jalus downtown in Chicago, Arba'in Jalus, like every year. It will start, inshallah, at 10 a.m. and goes till 1 p.m. IEC has arranged a bus from here that will transport you to the Thompson Center where the Jalus will be happening. That bus leaves at 8:45 a.m. from IEC parking lot. If you are driving to Jalus, there is discounted parking available at Poetry Garage. That is 201 West Madison Street, where that parking is available. Inshallah, lastly, Tuesday will be the day of Arba'in. IEC has, in the last few years, commemorated by doing a walk from various locations around the Glendale Heights area to IEC. There will be shuttle service starting at IEC at 10 a.m. that will shuttle you to the locations so you can drop your car off here and you can commemorate and walk towards IEC. After you walk, inshallah, here, there will be majlis in Urdu only, and then there will be Julus in the parking lot after that. And then, inshallah, Tuesday night will be the last of the lecture series by Sheikh Hazari. If there are any questions, IEC website has all of the details, or you can approach any member of IEC management to get your questions answered. With that, I would like to invite Sheikh Hazari to address Majlis. Can you please all welcome him with a loud salawat?
أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله، وعلى أهل بيتك المعصومين الأبرار الميامين المظلومين المضطهدين. السلام عليك وعلى ولدك المظلوم أبي عبد الله الحسين، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب، يا مظلوم، يا عطشان كربلاء، ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم، وأمنا من لجأ والتجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وجزاء سيئة سيئة مثلها، وجزاء سيئة سيئة مثلها، فمن عفا وأصلح فأجره على الله إنه لا يحب الظالمين. ولمن انتصر بعد ظلمه فأولئك ما عليهم من سبيل، إنما السبيل على الذين يظلمون الناس ويبغون في الأرض بغير الحق، أولئك لهم عذاب أليم. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear brothers and sisters, I assume there are sisters listening, even though I only see the brothers in front of me. Not to leave the sisters out, I want to thank you for allowing me the honor and the privilege to commemorate these days with you. And it is a distinct privilege for me to be here with all of you. May Allah bless you. When Imam Abi Abdullah al-Husayn was leaving Mecca, you all know this, that he left Medina, he came to Mecca, and even upon leaving Medina, there were people who were trying to convince him not to make this journey, either to stay in Medina, or as he encountered in Mecca, to stay in Mecca, or rather than go towards Iraq, after receiving so many letters from the people of Kufa, instead go somewhere else, maybe return to Medina, maybe go towards Yemen, other places. One of the individuals who came to speak to Imam Abi Abdullah al-Husayn was a man named Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar, I'm sure you've heard, he came and he was trying to tell Imam that, look, you have one of two options that I want to give you advice on. One is that you either pledge to Yazid like everyone else has done, and his reasoning behind this was to avoid bloodshed, or return to Medina and wait it out. Maybe Allah will take the life of Yazid and things will return to normal. Imam Hussein, he knew that there is no leaving it to the fact that maybe Yazid will die or maybe Yazid will live. And so instead, Imam Hussein told him, he says, look, you want me to leave and go back to Medina, yet the Bani Israel, as is reported in the Holy Quran, the stories of the Bani Israel were such that they took the head of Yahya off his body, they killed Yahya, they put it on a platter and they gave it to the king of their time. He says, it's no different now today what these people are trying to do to the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He said, Yazidun sharibul khumur wa ra'sul fujur يدعي الخلافة على المسلمين ويتآمر عليهم بغير رضا منهم. He says, Yazid is the drinker of alcohol. He says, every corruption you want to enumerate, he has done it. And he claims to be the Khalifa of the Muslimin. And وَيَتَآمَرْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And he stands as if he's a leader on top of them, commanding them, directing them, making them go a certain way. When, in all honesty, he has not achieved this, nor have they given this to him as the rightful position for him. They did not accept him rightfully. Imam Hussein saying this, he leaves and he goes. Why I start with this is because at every stage he stopped and he reminded people. He kept on telling people what his goal was, why he was going up towards Kufa. And because insan has this innate desire to logically know which direction we're going in, some people will say and ask the question that Imam Hussein, if he knew that he is going to be martyred in Karbala, why not go as far from Karbala as possible? Why go towards that one place? Why go towards Kufa? When he heard from so many people that Kufa is not a place where you're going to find support, why not go? Well, the answer is simple. Because if he hadn't gone to Kufa, people in history would look back and say, he complained about Yazid being a despotic ruler, being unjust, a corrupter of religion, but instead of going to the people who were claiming to support him, he went the opposite direction. How would they have known? How would he have known that the people of Kufa would turn their back on him? He acted on what was in front of him, what was known to the people. He had to act on what was apparent. And because progressive, when you think about behavior and any action, you think about it in a progressive manner in life, in everything you do. You don't start at A and jump to Z. You don't come out of high school and say, I'm going straight to medical school. You could try, but you're going to fail probably. Or they won't let you in. You have to go with progression. And this is the state of insan. And that's why when Rasulullah came, you know the ayah of the Holy Quran, what does it say? It says, Alif Lam Ra, Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka litukhrij an-nas min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. This book, O Habib, we have sent it to you. You cannot take the book without Rasulullah. The ayah, it says it. The book has come to Rasulullah. Why? So you, O Rasulullah, can take people from darkness towards light. What is that? It is a progression, is it not? Now I ask you, all of darkness is shaitan. Yes? It's all darkness. All nur is Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In our lives, we are not infallible. We are on a spectrum essentially. We are trying to move towards the nur. But wal-ayadhu billah, sometimes we get enveloped with darkness or we engage in darkness. That's why it is progression. And this is the state of humanity. And tonight, let's consider it. That is Islam anti-progress? Why? Because Today we look at the world and we think about what the world is like and we marvel, yes? We sit and say, Ya Allah, look at how amazing. And yet COVID has really shaken us and reminded us how weak we actually are and how quickly we can teeter and topple over just like that. And how Allah reminds us of our fickle and sort of feeble nature. And yet, you see that even then, how quickly a vaccine comes out, how good its efficacy is, how much it protects the people. And you see the progress on very many scales. Health, for example. Yes, people are living longer lives today than they were back in maybe 100 years ago, 200 years ago, when the lifespan, people would die at the age of 55, the average life. And it wasn't because of heart disease or cancer, it was because they would succumb to illness, like an infection, like a viral infection or a bacterial infection, or they'll develop cholera or something like that. Things that are unheard of today. The progress in medicine has made it such that people now are living 60, 70, 60 even is considered young. 70 is considered young. Today, 80, 85, 90 years of age, people going into their hundreds, more centenarians in the world today than there were before. And you marvel at this and you say, yes, look, even if you want to talk about progress for humanity, just think about wealth and how much wealth has increased in the world, isn't it? If you look at the GDP, the gross domestic product, I'm not an economist by any means, but if you just look at the data, and being a scientist, I like looking at data. If you look at the data, just look at the gross domestic product of the average human being today. It is higher than what it was even 10, 15 years ago. Forget about 100 years ago. 100 years you don't even compare because that was a different world to what we are today. Progress has brought us forward. And what some people say is that, no, this is not what Islam talks about. Yes? That Islam advocates a shedding of the lifestyle in the sense of the material world and devoting oneself to Allah and only Allah. And to say, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm not going to live in a nice house. I'm not going to have a nice car. Maybe you like BMW, Mercedes, something like that. No, I'm not. Because I'm a good Muslim, I'm not going to do any of those things. Instead, what I'm going to do is live the life of a pauper and not take anything upon myself. Why? Because it is a deterrent to my religion. Yet, there's a story that they say a man named Sufyan al-Thawri. This man, Sufyan al-Thawri, once came to Imam al-Sadiq. He saw Imam al-Sadiq, alayhi salam, salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He saw him walking in the street, and he saw Imam al-Sadiq wearing nice clothing. Okay, now again, there is this image of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, that they were simple individuals. They wore the coarsest of clothing. Their clothing was not by any means fancy, not even close to fancy, not even close to being something that would be considered opulent or expensive. Their clothing was rough and coarse and very simple. So this man, Sufyan al-Thawri, he sees Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, it is reported, wearing very nice clothes. Not anything super opulent or super expensive, but nice clothing. So he looks at him, he says, that is Ja'far ibn Muhammad. I'm going to go scold him. That how is he dressed like this? He goes, he says, Yabna Rasulillah. Now look, he calls him grandson of the Prophet. He says, O son of the Prophet, you are the descendant of Rasulullah. Yet look at how you are dressed in this manner. This is unbefitting of the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, who in his life wore the simplest of clothings and had basically nothing in terms of rich possessions. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, you are wrong. You are wrong. Why? He says, because in that time, in the time of Rasulullah, in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says they did not have riches. They did not have wealth and possession such that they could afford to wear it. They were constrained by the attack of the enemies, by the struggle of building a nation, and hence they could not afford to buy, or they didn't have the wealth or the means to buy expensive clothing or more expensive clothing. Instead, now you see the times have changed. And indeed, in the time of Imam al-Sadiq, the Banu Umayyah had become weak and they had more possession. The Ahlul Bayt actually had land in which they could work and farm and earn. And so Imam al-Sadiq, he says, today I have the means given to me by Allah, and he says it is Allah's promise that he will give to the pious servants. If indeed you are pious, Allah will give to you in the life of this world. So he says, why should I not take what Allah has given to me? He says, it is befitting of my dignity to wear this. He says, you judge me. Imam says to him, you judge me. But he says, come here, give me your hand. He takes his hand, he opens his robe like this. He opens the robe. He says, feel inside. When Sufyan al-Thawri felt, he felt the coarsest of clothing inside. Imam al-Sadiq, he says, that clothing that I wear inside, that's rough and hard like my grandfather Rasulullah used to wear, he says, that I wear for myself. He says, this one, he says, I wear to show other people. Look at this, the beauty of the Ahl al-Bayt, how it teaches. It is not wrong to wear good clothes. It's not wrong to progress if Allah has given you halal wealth, if Allah has given you possession, to move yourself forward in society. Yes? And so, even with respect to health, will Islam say, no, don't take a cure? No, in fact, Islam says, take a cure if it is going to help your health. If that is what is going to help you, obviously with the restrictions of Islam and the prohibitions that are known of Islam, take the things that will preserve your health. Live a longer life. Indeed, if Allah has said that, hence you see even today the COVID vaccine, what are so many of the maraja' saying? But go and take it. It is for your benefit. If it will save your life, it will protect it from spreading to others, then it is your obligation to take it, to protect yourself. This is progress. Indeed, this is progress. So progress in health, progress in your possession, in your wealth. What about progress in other things like society? In the way people are living their lives. Today, we live in an industrialized world, but it wasn't always like this, yes? That in the old days, there were agrarian societies built around farming. But when in the early 1900s, the late 1800s, when the industrial boom happened, what happened to people? People started leaving the farms and they started coming to the cities, did they not? And as they came to the cities, what happened? People started to earn more money. Why did they leave the farms? Because the farms were difficult to maintain. And so instead, what would they do? They would come to the city, they will work in the factories, they will earn a better living. Was it difficult? Yes, it was difficult. But they earned a better living. Do you think Islam will say no to this under any state? Why would Islam say, no, don't go earn a halal living, work hard? It will never say that. It will say, go seek your living. Earn what you have to earn for yourself. And do so in a manner that by which you can earn the halal living and provide for those who are living under your dependence, those who you care for, those who you are going to be looking after. Islam teaches this. Now, those are all easy things, yes, simple things to understand, common sense things. But what about something like morality? We talk about the progress of health. We talk about the advancement of acquisition of wealth and possession. Clearly, people are better off today, live in bigger houses, have nicer cars. Even people in the East. People don't have cars, but they have cell phones, right? You see this. Everybody has a cell phone. That's a sign of wealth. That even simple people living in villages have cell phones today. That is a sign of wealth and affluence that has spread throughout the world. Health has improved. People's possession, wealth, and material gain has improved. Societies have become more industrialized, more connected, with more options. But what about the well-being of human beings? Not from a health perspective, but in terms of morality, in terms of lifestyle and how you choose to live your life. Now let me go with this point just a little bit, yes? When you talk about morality, you're talking about what you consider to be correct or just and proper and good versus what you consider to be improper, unjust, evil, not good, unbeneficial to anybody. You have haqq and you have batil. You have what is moral and you have what is immoral. Has that progressed? And indeed, you will say today, and there is this contention, that people will say human beings are more civilized today. Or there is this accusation that, look at Muslims, they are so uncivilized. All right? Now, when they say that Muslims are uncivilized, what are they looking at? They're looking at a picture of a Muslim, whether it is a man or a woman, And they are assuming something about how they live that is considered to be backwards to them, uncivilized to them. And so the question I ask you is that, are they looking at the person's religion, or are they looking at their culture or their ethnicity or their nationality? That's the question we have to answer. Why? Because when it comes to person being civilized, yes, what determines if they are civilized or not, or whether they have morality or not? Even today, today's society that has become so free talks about freedom, that we are so advanced, we live in a free society. Everyone has their rights, and that this is considered to be moral as well. Now I ask you, if today we are more moral than we were yesterday, does that mean that 1,000 years ago we were far less moral than we are today? That morality had to progress? Or are human beings different today than they were then, such that what is moral today was not actually supposed to be moral 1,000 years ago, and that the standard has changed, right? What does that mean? It means that human beings have changed, that the human being that was there 1,400 years ago in the Hijaz is not the same human being as is sitting in Chicago, Illinois today. And that morality for the one 1,400 years ago is not the same morality as it is for today, isn't it? But is that the case? No, because human beings are fundamentally the same. We are the same. Nothing has changed about humanity. And that's why even the Holy Quran, when it talks about insan, it talks about every insan. And it talks about a code that has come for all of life. And so when you talk about morality today, Islam indeed will say that don't say that morality has progressed or civilization has progressed or societies have become better because now suddenly people are more moral. No, no. The code of morality was always there. It's just that you chose to follow something different. That's all. It's just that you decided to create a different standard. And so to answer the question that is Islam against progress? No, it's not against progress. It is not by any means. But there are some things we have to answer, that we have to determine. And I will keep it simple on a Friday night. I know we already have one who's probably been in school all day. I worked this morning. I went to work half a day, and alhamdulillah, I was able to fly out with no trouble. So I know you guys are tired, so we won't take too much time, inshallah. We have to answer 3 questions, okay? And this is very important. And this particularly, I say it for the young ones who are sitting here, that if we want to talk about Islam as being quote unquote progressive, and it is indeed progressive. Islam is a progressive religion. And that's why in many of the things, when we want to define circumstances, when it comes to fiqh, when it comes to the jurisprudence of the religion, we use what is called urf. Urf means the common understanding of something, okay? What does that mean? That the common understanding of, let's say, Najaf, is it going to be the same as common understanding here in Chicago, Illinois, or the United States? No, it will not be. Common understanding there based on what are their normal ways of acting, their living, their traditions, the way people behave is very different from here. We're not talking about halal haram. Halal haram is the same in Chicago and in Najaf. That is not different. We're talking about customs, ways of acting, all right? Let me give you an example. So this is theoretical. In one city, you have, it is accepted for a Muhammad Sheikh to ride on a moped, okay? And maybe you've seen this, yes? That in some cities, the Sheikh will ride on the moped and he's got his turban on and he's riding on the moped, accepted, completely accepted. You go to another city, it is unacceptable for the Sheikh to be riding on a moped, unacceptable. And maybe this is not as theoretical as I'm making it out to be. It's unacceptable. Why? Because it's considered to be demeaning to the Sheikh. The Sheikh is supposed to have a high status amongst the people. He's supposed to be esteemed and honorable. So it is not accepted for him in that society, that second society, for him to be riding on a moped. No, instead, someone should be driving him and he shouldn't be sitting in the front seat. He should be sitting in the back seat and someone should be giving him the respect. And I'm not hinting at anything, really, I'm not. I'll ride on the moped or a bicycle, no problem. So this is what I'm talking about, urf. This is what I mean when I say Islam is progressive, is that it addresses the nature of people and it says, how do we ensure that people understand the application of halal and haram in their lives? So the things we have to recognize are three. There are three questions we have to ask about whether Islam is for progress or not. One is the standard by which we live, all right? Islam is for progress, but it means that the standard by which we live must remain what Allah has decided. That is black and white. If Allah has said something is haram, it does not matter whether we are 200, 500, 1,000 years into the future, haram is haram. That is it. There's no question to us. Why do we justify this in Islam? Because Allah is the creator of Adam, the first human being, and the very last human being who's going to be born on earth before Yawm al-Qiyamah. He is the creator of that human being. So He knows exactly what is prohibited, what is acceptable, what is allowed, and He is the one who is going to establish that standard. Now, the second thing I'm going to say is the one that I want you to consider very carefully, is when we say that Islam is not against progress, we're all for scientific research, we're all for technological advancement, we're all for networking, we're all for connectivity. Islam is all about those things. That's fine, that's acceptable. What Islam says, though, is that beware of the consequences of those things. Progress is fine, but beware of the consequences of those things. Now, what does that mean? I mentioned to you that the agrarian societies became into industrialized societies, right? People came to the industries. Do you know what that did? Yes, it created more money, more jobs, but do you know what also it did? It destroyed the family system that existed. Why? Because women now were going to work. And that's not to say women shouldn't work. Don't take that as the meaning. But I'm telling you what happened in history. Women started going to work. People started going to different places. It put a strain on the families. They worked longer hours. Unfortunately, there were injuries in the industrialized world. Yes? Because you go to these factories that are not maintained properly, there are injuries. What happens to that poor person once they're injured? There is no paid leave. There's no sick leave. There's nothing like that. You don't work, you don't get paid. Yes? Downside. What else happened? Are all industrialized countries created equal? No, they're not. You have a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere. Just look at the disparity in these two regions of the world. All the northern hemisphere countries, highly industrialized, possessing resources, all of the influence in world politics and how things flow. The southern are basically acting as a supply chain up to them. Are they not? Where do all your coffee beans come from? Are they grown here? No, they're grown in South America. Those South Americans, are they yielding the profits that the companies over here are yielding? No, they're not yielding the same profits. They're working their hands to the bone to supply the big companies. It is known. This is not something new. Yes, Islam says become industrialized, progress, improve, do things to help individuals earn a halal living. But realize that there are consequences. Even with respect to health, my dear brothers and sisters, I've mentioned this before, maybe you've heard me say this, that one of the greatest discoveries was antibiotics, was it not? Antibiotics are a great discovery, saved a lot of lives. People are saved, and we should take them to protect ourselves when we have a bacterial infection or there's some process going in the body. However, what has that done also? It's created bacteria that are resistant to the antibiotic. Vancomycin-resistant bacteria, methicillin-resistant bacteria. You throw everything at these bacteria, they won't die. Until you make such a strong antibiotic that it'll kill the bacteria, but it'll also damage the body, will it not? So we talk about progress, but what does Islam say? Be aware of the consequences of that. Be aware of what can happen. And that's why you look at the example of Ahl al-Bayt. You know this story. One day the people were walking in this area surrounding Medina. It is reported that they saw Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam working hard, yeah? And breaking the rock and struggling away, just working. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, Ya Allah, baby wa ummi, he will work and just read about his work ethic. Man, if we can learn one thing from him, it's work ethic. He worked. And he gets this from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. He's breaking the rocks. People are standing and watching him. Where nobody could do this work, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam is breaking the rocks, and he's breaking the rocks, and he's digging the hole. His face is covered in sweat. He's drenched from the work. Suddenly, water springs out. In a piece of land that the people were saying, Ali bought this land, there's nothing here but rock, debris. There's nothing to be found. There's no greenery. You cannot feed your animals. There's no oasis here. Nothing is here. It's just rock, dry rock, nothing. He breaks the rock, water springs out of it. Everyone says, Ya Allah, Ali ibn Abi Talib is going to be rich. He broke the rock. He gave all his energy, worked so hard, tired himself down to the very last bit, and now water has come out, he'll be rich. Why? Because you've got water in the middle of the desert. Yet he finishes, he comes out of that well, he makes a well out of it, he comes out. They're all looking, they're congratulating him. They say, Ya Ali, look, you have gone and you've broken the ground, you've cracked the rock and the water has come out from underneath. You will be rich. Allah has blessed you. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, this is not for me. He says, indeed, I have broken the rock and the water has come out. But he says, I give this all to the poor of Medina. All of it is given to the poor of Medina. Take it from me. I don't want it. Progress, right? We talk about progress. We talk about acquisition and advancement, but we don't think about the consequences. What happens to people when there is progress? What happens to them? Yes? There are consequences. There are negative consequences. Why? Because to insan, progress means something that is attractive, you want to do. Yes? When you see two people, be honest with me. Just be honest. You see two people. One is a doctor, okay? Dressed sharply, wearing his lab coat, says, I don't know, Ali ibn Muhammad, MD. Okay? We use two good names. Ali ibn Muhammad, Muhammad ibn Ali, MD. Okay? Neurosurgeon. At one time I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I wasn't smart enough. So I got my PhD instead. Neurosurgeon MD, okay? You see that one in front of you. In another one in front of you, you see a man dressed in ordinary t-shirt, maybe wearing just regular pants, and you find out that this other person is a plumber, okay? And that also is not a really, that's a really good profession because they probably make more than the doctor does these days, yeah? So you see the two. You see MD, neurosurgeon, you see plumber, okay? The plumber, obviously, he's been working all day, so he's sweaty, his hair is all messed up, he's got stains all over his clothes because he's under a sink somewhere. Who will you want to emulate? Which one are you going to look at and say, man, I want to be like him? It's the doctor, right? If anyone says the plumber, they're lying. I guarantee you, yes? You will never say, I want to be like the plumber. You will say, I want to be like the doctor. Why? Because of progress. Because he progressed, yes? In your eyes, materially, educationally, in life, in his standard in life, whatever he has achieved, he has progressed. Whereas in my mind, the plumber is nothing, really, right? I don't consider him something to be worthy of emulation, that I want to become like that. That's why when you see success in the world, progress, quote unquote, whether it's health, whether it's money and possession, whether it's status in society, education, anything, what do you want? You want to follow it. People want to follow it. And yet what happens when people start to follow? You get greed, right? You get greed, you get people who want to grab and take everything that they want. You get jealousy, yes? People become covetous. What that guy has, I want to have the same thing. If he has it, I have to have it as well, or do better than him, yes? What does it create? Aggression. All of the aggression in the world today, whether it's between countries or individuals, is because of what? Few things. Resources, right? People wanting resources, people wanting power, people wanting influence. It creates aggression amongst you. And what does it do? The more you get, the more what does it create inside of you? Shahwa, right? Desire, more desire. So progress is there. Progress is a good thing. But Quran, Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam, always warn that be aware of the consequences. That's something we should learn. That yes, it's good to progress, good to achieve, become a doctor, become a lawyer, live in a good house, drive a Mercedes-Benz, do all the things, progress. Do the research to advance humanity, but recognize that with every step, that there may be a consequence that is negative, that is potentially detrimental. And the worst thing is, it may not be detrimental to you, it could be detrimental to someone else that you don't know about. How much wastage do we create because of the unlimited resources we have at our fingertips? How much wastage? So much wastage do we create in the world. And do you know where the results of that wastage are, the effects of that wastage? Not here. In the developing world, that's where. Just look at greenhouse gas effects. Greenhouse gas effects, you don't feel them really here. You feel them in the third world. I can show you epidemiological studies that demonstrate that conclusively. Conclusively, they show that. That's what Islam is talking about, is that have progress, but recognize that there are consequences. The third thing, I said the first thing is know the standards, must be universal. Number two, know that there be consequences to progress. And number three, recognize that with progress, there's responsibility. We don't recognize that. I saw that neurosurgeon. I went to medical school. I became a neurosurgeon. And what did I do? I made that as a source of acquisition of wealth for myself. All I did was acquire, and I didn't remember anybody else. I've progressed so much in my life that I've become oblivious of everybody and everything around me, isn't it? And doesn't the world do this to you? The more you progress, the more you become enamored by your own success, you forget everyone. You forget you're living in your ivory tower and nobody else exists around you. Islam says, yes, progress, earn, accumulate what you need to accumulate, but recognize that somebody else has a haqq to it. Someone else has a right to it in front of you. Recognize that fact. And do so in a manner that as soon as you achieve, pass the buck. Share what you have to share. If you got to go to graduate school or medical school, search out some unfortunate person in the community, maybe not even in your community, somewhere outside, and find out if they want to go to medical school and help them go to medical school. Help them become a neurosurgeon after you became one. If you were able to advance your life, ensure that you can pass that on to somebody else so they can ensure that they pass it on as well. But yet, we don't see this in the world. We see only selfishness and what is considered to be me advancing my goal and what is going to make my life better. And so Islam is not anti-progress. Islam is about understanding what causes us to falter from that progress. And unfortunately, today we see that. When life was simpler, there was less chance of slipping, yes? Today there's more chance of slipping. Why? There's a lot more money. There's a lot more resources. There's a lot more at our fingertips. And yet there's also more chance to slip. That's what Islam is teaching. They say a man named Muhammad ibn Abi Umayr. Muhammad ibn Abi Umayr was one of the companions of our Imams. And it is related that he was caught by the Banu Abbas. He was a companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Kadhim, and Imam Raza alayhi salam. And Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He was caught and he was executed. He was tortured and he was killed. He was a keeper of hadith. He had hadith of Ahl al-Bayt that he had kept in his books. He was caught and he was killed. One day he came in the earlier years and he asked Hisham ibn al-Hakam. Hisham ibn al-Hakam, great companion, young student of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. He came, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He said, Yabna Rasulullah, he asked Hisham, he says, oh Hisham, tell me, what is it that makes a ma'soom a ma'soom? What makes an infallible an infallible? How do they become an infallible? So Hisham explains, he says they are infallible because of four things. Hirs, hasad, ghadab, shahwa. Four things. Hirs, hasad, ghadab, shahwa. And these four things, let's see if we have these inside of ourselves. Hirs, it means to chase after the world and collect and hoard. Chase and collect everything. Yes? Hisham explains to Muhammad ibn Abi Umayr, he says to him, the Imam can never have hirs inside of him. This desire to hoard everything. Why? Hisham explains, he says, because as the chosen of God and the Amir of all the Muslims and the leader of all the Muslims, everything is already under his thumb. Everything is already under his thumb. He doesn't need to chase after anything, collect anything. It's already there. Why would he need to? Number two, he doesn't have any hasad inside of him. Hasad means what? Jealousy. He has no jealousy. The man asked why. Hisham answered, he says he's not jealous. Why? Because Allah has given him everything. Allah has already given him everything, given the Imam, the infallible everything, such that there's no human being he has to look to and say, I want to be like him. There's no neuroscientist or neurosurgeon or anything like that he needs to look at and say, I want to be like that. Allah has made him perfect. He doesn't have to look at somebody else and feel jealous that I want to be like him. Maybe this is a message for us. He doesn't feel angry, ghadab. He doesn't have anger except for feeling angry at those things that violate Allah's code. He is angry for that which makes Allah angry. He becomes angry of those things that cause Allah's wrath. That's what makes him angry. Why? Because that causes injustice in the world and imbalance amongst people. And the last thing, he has no shahwa, no desire. He has no desire. So Hisham explains, why is that? He says, because for the infallible, if you tell him, eat some food that is bad tasting or bitter tasting, in comparison to the sweet, pure food that he is going to receive in the akhirah, which one is he going to choose? If you tell him to choose between a beautiful nurani face that he has in the next world versus the darkened countenance that he has in this world, which one will he choose? If he tell him that you will get everlasting joy and peace in that world, and with what Allah has for him, versus what is temporary and limited and transient and even faded in front of the eyes in this world, which one is he going to choose? He will choose that. So there is no desire inside of him. These are the things we have to consider when we think about our own lives. Progress, move forward, advance yourselves, educate yourselves. Surely, Islam advocates it. Advocates improvement, modernization, improvement in the lifestyles and the well-being of human beings, but recognize the consequences of doing so. Be aware of what it means that when you did it, in every way, shape, and form, be aware. And to some degree, this is Al-Imam Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. Yes? You all know this, that when Imam Raza alayhi salatu wassalam, Al-Imam Abi al-Hasan, Imam Abi al-Hasan, when he was finally poisoned by Ma'mun al-Abbasi, they say they came to him. The report says his people came, his family came. They saw him in the room. They went into the room. His bed was empty. Nobody was lying in the bed. They looked. They saw Imam al-Raza alayhi salam lying on the ground. They went to him. They say, Ya Abul Hasan, Ya ibn Rasulillah, you are sick. Poison had riddled his body by this point. He was rapidly approaching the last moments of his life. They said, why are you on the ground? Why not lie in the bed? Al-Imam al-Raza alayhi salam looked at them, at his relatives, and he said to them, how can I lie on that bed in this last moment of my life? When my grandfather, Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, was lying on the ground of Karbala. I imagine all the Imams were this way. Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, Imam Kadhim, all were this way. That in those last moments, they must have remembered Al-Imam Abi Abdullah. That how he lay on that sand of Karbala. And that difficulty that faced their family. You all know this, that not only was that difficulty on Al-Imam Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, but it continued on the family of Al-Imam al-Husayn. They came, they desecrated the body of Imam Hussein. They took the rida off his head. They stole the ring from his finger, trampled on the body of Al-Husayn, and did not stop and went straight to lighting tents on fire. With the daughters of Rasulullah now running, screaming, calling for help. It is related that one little girl is faced with the enemy soldier. They are robbing the possessions, taking, stealing, whatever they can rob. Not just from the martyrs, but from the prisoners now as well. This soldier comes in front of the daughter of Imam al-Husayn. She's very young. The soldier looks at her. He begins to cry. The soldier begins to cry. It is reported the little girl, this daughter of Imam Hussain, she looks at the soldier. She says, "Why are you crying, O enemy of my father? What are you crying about? You have won. You have succeeded. You have killed my father. What are you crying about? You are looting. You are taking." He says to her, tears in his eyes, he says, "I am looking at your ears, at those earrings. That if I don't steal them and take them, some other soldier will." The earrings even were taken. The sabaya, the prisoners were taken. They were marched into Kufa. This is just the beginning of the journey. The Rawi, he says, they brought them into the place in Kufa where the animals used to be brought. The animals would be taken by the shepherds out to eat and graze. And then before being brought into their holding area, they will be brought into a place in Kufa where they will clean the body of the animal. The daughters of Rasulullah are brought into this place. They are held here and then placed into a pen, into a holding place, like almost like a stable where they put the animals. The men of Kufa, the soldiers, they come forward and they start to argue who will take the women as their prisoner, as their slave. Then suddenly somebody steps forward and he says to the soldiers that these women who are in this captivity here, there are women from many, many different tribes. And if you start to take their women as slaves, the women from these tribes, the men of those tribes will fight against you. They will not allow their women to be taken slaves. You will have a revolt on your hand. You will have chaos on your hand and you will have bloodshed. So immediately the soldiers reconsidered and they said, tell them to call their men, tell them to call their women. They say that the men of the Banu Asad, they stepped forward. They called out, Asadiyya, Asadiyya, ukhraji. O women of the Banu Asad, come out, we have come to take you home. فقمنا نساء البني أسد وخرجنا. The ladies of the Banu Asad, they stood up and they left. The tribe of Banu Tamim, they stepped forward and their men, they called out, Tamimiyya, Tamimiyya, akhraji, qumi wa akhraji. Get up, stand up and come out, O ladies of Banu Tamim, your men are here. The ladies of the Banu Tamim got up and left. The men of the Banu Khuza'a, they stepped forward and said, Khuzariya, qumi wakhraji. O lady of the Banu Khuzara, stand up and come out. Your men have come to take you home. She stood up and she left. Finally, one tribe came forward. They started to call their ladies. Only one lady was left. She would not get up. She would remain seated on the ground until finally they had called her 2 or 3 times. Finally, another voice from inside the prison. A lady said to her, Qumi, Qumi wakhruji. One other lady, she said to her from inside, get up and go to your men, go and rejoin your family. فقامت, she got up off the ground. She said, Ya bint Rasulillah, وكيف أخرج وليس لك أهل ولا عشيرة? How should I get up and go? How do I get up and go to my family when you, Zainab, you Kulthum, don't have any family? وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك ونقسم عليك بحق الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها لعن الله ظالميها. اللهم شافي كل مريض، اللهم رد كل غريب، اللهم فك كل أسير، اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك يا كريم. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك وجنبنا معاصيك وثبت أقدامنا على صراطك المستقيم وخذ بأيدينا إليك يا أرحم الراحمين وفرج عنا يا الله فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب من ذلك وافرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है। हाय जिसको ज़हर लो गो मुसलमान ने दिया है, हाय जिसको ज़हर लो वो मुसलमान ने दिया है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है। सब आके करो बंद दुहाई है दुहाई, एक बीबी आज़ादारों यहाँ शाम से आई, लिपटी है जनाजे से नहीं सर पे रिदा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है। आए हैं जनाजे पे नबी शाए उमम भी, कुलसूम रुक़ैया भी है मासूमाए क़ुम भी, वो बीबी है करबल में जली जिसकी आबा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है। रोते हैं फरिश्ते भी ज़मीं और ज़मा भी, आए लो कलम ऐश बरी कौनो मका भी, खैरुल निसा के ला लेके मातम की सदा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है। मामून अब्बासी की इनायत है ये लोगों, हाय आले पैगंबर की अतात है ये लोगों, सैयदों से ज़रा देखो ये उम्मत की जफा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है, मज़लूम बेवतन ये मेरा मौला रज़ा है।
या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन, शबीर ढूंढता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर ढूंढता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर ढूंढता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, बेटे के कातिलों से ये बाप पूछता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर ढूंढता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर ढूंढता है। इतना ज़ईफ़ हो गया आता नहीं नज़र, आता नहीं नज़र, अकबर की लाश से यूं ही कहता गुजर गया है, अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर ढूंढता है अकबर, शबीर ढूंढता है। काम आ गया कमर में जाता नहीं चला, जाता नहीं चला, बाजू के बल चला होंठों पे ये सदा है, अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर शबीर उठने की कोशिशों में जामू के बल गिरा, जामू के बल गिरा, एक कांपती आवाज में आबिद ने जब सुना है, अकबर कहाँ गिरा है, शबीर ढूंढता है, शबीर आया जो पास लाश के आता नहीं यकीन, आता नहीं यकीन, पर्ची पे हाथ है मगर शबीर सोचता है, अकबर कहाँ गिरा है शबीर ढूंढता है गिरा है शबीर बेटे के कातिलों से ये बाप पूछता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है शबीर ढूंढता है शबीर ढूंढता है इतना ज़ईफ़ हो गया आता नहीं नजर आता नहीं नजर अकबर की लाश से यूं ही कहता गुजर गया है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है शबीर ढूंढता है गिरा है शबीर ढूंढता है अकबर कहाँ गिरा है
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وحبيبك وصفيك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين وعلى الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن بن علي المجتبى والحسين بن علي سيد الشهداء غريب كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي والمهدي الإمام القائم صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان 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 من زوال الإيمان وفتن الزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والذابين عنه والمسارعين إليه في قضاء حوائجه والمستشهدين بين يديه جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته صلوات الله